is NBC Palm Springs.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Gino Lamont.
And I'm Sarah Sanchez. A scary situation in Northern California. More than 1.4 million acres are burning as colossal wildfires torch the region. It's already one of the worst fire seasons in history, and it's not even close to being finished. More than 14,000 firefighters are now working day in and day out to contain some of the largest fires we've seen in state history. Nearly 600 fires are burning, many sparked by lightning and record heat. And CAL FIRE says they're worried about this week's forecast.
We're extremely concerned about what's taking place in the next couple of days with more dry lightning.
This year's wildfires have already caused more deaths and destruction than all of 2019. The state has now received a presidential major disaster declaration. The National Guard will deploy about a dozen crews with air support across the state.
One of the people coordinating the effort to fight those fires is Chief Bill Weiser. He's CAL FIRE Riverside County's new fire chief. He sat down with our Kitty Alvarado for an exclusive interview about the challenges the state is facing right now with all these wildfires.
CAL FIRE Riverside County Fire Department has a new chief at the helm, Bill Weiser. As chief, he will lead over 1,300 employees to protect over 3 million citizens in the second largest geographical area in the state, with a budget of more than $350 million.
It's an honor to serve all of those people, but it is a big weight. And it's something that I take seriously.
Being CAL FIRE Riverside County Chief is really two jobs in one. He's one of 21 unit chiefs for the state, plus the county chief in charge of 21 contract cities and unincorporated areas.
It's an integral, cooperative, regional fire protection. It's probably one of the greatest plans in the nation for firefighting, how we take different communities' resource needs and put them together and to make one really strong fire department.
He's been in the fire service for nearly 4 decades, all of them with CAL FIRE. He started as a seasonal firefighter and rose through the ranks to become chief.
I am lucky that I have come through the ranks.
He's seen big changes in the fire service.
It's become more challenging over the time.
One of those challenges, the pandemic.
And it's been tougher for our men and women that have to deal with COVID and wear a mask and a shield and other things, because we don't have that usual, really genuine human contact we have with people that call us and need us.
And this fire season has also been a challenge. They fought the Apple fire that burned over 33,000 acres, and right now they have over 200 fire personnel fighting the massive wildfires in Northern California. They already have a plan in place for peak fire season here.
We will use our compacts and agreements that we have throughout the state to be able to bring those surge resources to us, like we're providing right now. When we really get our fire season, our Santa Anas, it only happened in October.
But no matter the challenge, he says he and his department are ready to give their best.
When California citizens need us, we serve. That's what we do.
Kitty Alvarado, NBC Palm Springs.
Help is on the way from other states. Even though Oregon and Arizona are battling their own fires, they've sent crews and engines to help here in California.
We've already received 60 fire engines from neighboring states, from Arizona, Washington, Oregon, New Mexico, and then we have about 24 more fire engines from other states that are currently en route.
The crews either head right to the front lines or they're sent to local fire stations to help with everyday calls for service. Wyoming sent a massive Air National Guard plane. There are also out-of-state privately owned firefighting airplanes joining the fight.
California's oldest state park is damaged extensively from the CZU Lightning Complex fire. This is the Big Basin Redwood State Park, home of the historic and ancient redwoods. Many of them are burned, but redwoods actually tend to survive these types of fires. Many of the park's historic and modern buildings, though, are severely damaged or completely destroyed.
And it now seems firefighters are being targeted by thieves. Santa Cruz officials say someone stole a wallet from a fireground commander's truck and drained his bank account. There's now an online campaign to raise money for that firefighter. No arrests have been made.
This is just about the worst air that you can breathe in when it's full of wildfire smoke.
Yeah, the smoke from the wildfire has health officials worried about the toll it's going to take on people's lungs, especially obviously during the pandemic. Several global air quality monitoring websites show the levels in the Bay Area of California were worse than anywhere else in the world. Health experts are telling people in the Bay Area to stay inside as much as possible.
We're taking a live look now from our Agua Caliente casino cam. No smoke here. Lots of blue sky out there. We're going to send things over to NBC Palm Springs Chief Meteorologist Mike Everett. He has a look at the conditions across the state. Mike.
Sarah, one of the major issues continues to be smoke. You know, it's one thing to tell you about it. It's another thing to be able to show you how pervasive all of that. We're talking about dozens of large fires across northern and central California, and that flow continues to move off towards the northeast. So places like Idaho, as far away as Kansas, are feeling that smoke. And as we were just discussing there, the air quality terrible. Not only is it smoke, but you've got all that particulate matter and really high ozone levels as well. Thankfully, that's not something that we're dealing with. We have high humidity. That's a whole different issue. I'll tell you more about that in a moment. I've got this backed way off to show you what's going on here, the scope of it. Not only do we have those fires happening right now, but on top of that, we've got some moist, unstable air across Northern California that is sparking the potential for more dry lightning overnight tonight and into Tuesday. Thus, all of this red that you're seeing right here is a red flag warning that's in place. Normally, we associate that with very dry air, but that's not the case here. I'll show you those showers in just a moment. Then all of this gray that you're seeing in the Central Valley, off into Idaho and out towards Kansas and even out towards Colorado are those smoke warnings that are in place. They've got some fire issues of their own across the Intermountain West. Take a look at radar right now. I've got it zoomed way out. You can see where the high pressure is. There's that clockwise flow, basically centered over the Four Quarters region. But as we look up towards Northern California, there's that instability that could spark more of those storms again tonight. Not a lot of moisture for them to work with. So when you've got instability and relatively dry air, that's a major problem. Taking a look closer to home here, we have some heat. In fact, we got up to 115 today. 113 is where we are at Palm Springs International. But the great thing is that we got that west-northwesterly flow early this evening. In fact, it's breezy along the I-10 corridor. Look at that, 13 miles an hour north-northwest. This is what we didn't have last week and allowed those dew points to get into the 70s and allowed humidity to get into the 30 and 40% range. So in relative terms, 17% is looking pretty darn good right now. We do have some heat headed our way. In fact, another round of watches and warnings will go into place this week. Looks like it's going to peak on Wednesday back at 115 once again. We'll have a watch that'll be in place there that'll be allowed to expire on Thursday. And then what happens behind that is absolutely wonderful. The timing is spectacular as far as the weekend goes, and it's right around the corner from the first day of September. Stick around. I'm going to show you something good coming up.
Coronavirus coverage brought to you by East Valley COVID-19 testing site, serving residents of eastern Coachella Valley.
COVID-19 hospitalizations in California are down 20% over the past 2 weeks. ICU rates are also down 19%. 5 counties, including Orange County, have been removed now from a so-called watch list. If the counties can maintain their data for the next 14 days, they can begin reopening more sectors to the public. In-person learning could be returning to some Valley schools. Today is the first day Riverside County schools can apply for a waiver to bring students back to campus, but not all districts are ready. So far, only private schools have applied. Olivia Sandusky joins us now at Palm Valley School with more. Olivia.
Sarah, Palm Valley tells me they applied for that waiver for their lower campus because they have a smaller population of students as well as a pretty big sized campus here. I also spoke to some child care services today that have been providing their services throughout the pandemic. They tell me they hope that the health precautions that they've had in place can act as a model for these schools who are looking to reopen. Students at the Montessori School of the Desert give thanks before lunch. The child care facility is an essential service and never had to move to an online platform.
We reopened on May 4th, and so far we've had the same children come. Nobody's gotten sick. We do have safety procedures and health checks that we do every day.
Staff teaches small, isolated classes and says in-person education has been a benefit to their students.
It's not only just the academics, but the socialization that they're getting as well.
The program's strategy could be a model for other Coachella Valley campuses, as Riverside County allows schools to apply for a waiver to bring back K through 6th grade students. Palm Valley School in Rancho Mirage has already sent in their application, but says if approved, parents can still choose what's best for their family.
It's about options, creating options for those who want to be in person, for those who want to remain at home, or a variation thereof.
The head of the school also says their 40-acre private campus allows them to spread out.
We also have very small classes, which enables us to keep our kids safe and yet have them in person.
All local public school districts, which have a much larger student body, have not yet filled out the waiver. In a statement, the superintendent of Coachella Valley Unified says, "At this time, we are still reviewing the waiver process and determining the needs of our district. Our rigorous distance learning model will continue for now." When submitted, each application will be vetted by the county, and Palm Valley staff says their goal is to be prepared.
We recognize that this is very fluid. We have to be small enough and agile enough to respond to increase in numbers or changing mandates from the health officials.
Now, these waivers do have a lot of qualifications, and of course, not every school that applies will be accepted, but Palm Valley does expect to hear back in the next couple of weeks. Reporting live in Rancho Mirage, Olivia Sandusky, NBC Palm Springs.
All right, thank you, Olivia. Scientists in Hong Kong are reporting their first case of coronavirus patient who was infected for a second time. The patient was first diagnosed with COVID-19 late in March and about 4.5 months later was infected again. Researchers say the strain for the second infection appears to be slightly different than the first. Findings suggest some patients may only have short-lived immunity.
President Trump announces emergency use authorization for convalescent plasma treatment of COVID-19. And this is how the treatment actually works. It starts with a donor who has already had the virus. They donate blood, and that blood is pumped into a machine which separates plasma from the blood. Then the donor's blood gets pumped back into their body, and the plasma can be used on a patient who has COVID-19. Why is plasma so important in fighting the virus?
So plasma is the liquid portion of the blood. That liquid portion contains the natural immunity that someone develops in response to an infection, in this case, COVID-19.
Now, it's important to note this is not a cure for coronavirus.
This is not the same as an approval, but it's an authorization and allows us to expand the access to this.
Some experts are expressing concern with this treatment, saying more trials are needed to prove its effectiveness.
Yeah, so we spoke with our local health experts about the treatment, as our local hospitals have been using plasma for some months now, and it is showing some promising results. Our Daytona Everett is here with the very latest on that. Daytona.
Gino, before President Trump's announcement, you could only be treated by the plasma if you were enrolled in the Mayo Clinic study. Our local hospitals had hundreds of patients enrolled in that study, and with the results from them and thousands of other patients across the country, this treatment is becoming a big talker.
Yeah, I think I just need to lay back.
This was the first convalescent plasma donation in the Coachella Valley from a former COVID patient.
This is one way I could say, okay, let me help somehow.
Angela Hoyt tested positive for COVID-19 in March. She then donated her plasma in April. Fast forward to now.
This is a powerful therapy that transfuses very, very strong antibodies from the blood of recovered patients to help treat patients battling a current infection.
President Trump announcing the FDA has issued a temporary emergency use authorization for convalescent plasma. This is dramatically increasing access to the treatment.
I expect the demand to increase.
Dr. Joe Chaffin is the chief medical officer for Lifestream Blood Bank, a collector in the Coachella Valley. They're providing plasma to Eisenhower Health and Desert Regional. Both hospitals are utilizing the treatment as a part of the Mayo Clinic study. This study's findings played a large role in the FDA's decision. But is it too early to deem this treatment fully effective?
You actually cannot say that this product is, as of yet, proven to be effective. The reality is the data is too early for us to say that with certainty.
To get more data means they need more donors. Donors like Matt, who waited on Lifestream's list for weeks to do his part after contracting the virus.
For myself, I will continue to donate as long as possible.
We need those folks to contact us, and we will get them through as quickly as possible, work with them, but we are going to need more of this product.
At some point in the future, Lifestream says they'll need to donate units of plasma that have a higher amount of antibodies versus a lower amount of antibodies. In terms of the general donor requirements, though, those are still the same. For NBC Palm Springs, I'm Daytona Everett.
All right, thank you, Daytona. A standoff outside a Coachella home this morning. It took police around 3 hours to contact Jose Miranda, who was believed to have a weapon inside his home. Police were there to arrest Miranda on a separate assault with a deadly weapon charge.
Yeah, and fire damages El Super grocery store in India, a 2-alarm fire breaking out over the weekend while customers were inside shopping. Nobody was hurt, and fire investigations are still trying to figure out exactly what started the fire inside this El Super.
The Palm Springs Pride Parade will take place as a socially distanced car caravan this year. It's set to take place on November 7th. Anyone from the same household can drive together. Costumes and posters are allowed, but the Palm Springs City Council still has to approve the new coronavirus safety measures for the event to go forward. They're expected to review the plan next month.
Well, it was one of the most talked about cases of the early 2000s. Coming up, we'll have more on why Scott Peterson is headed back to court.
And Californians may be eligible for up to $300 per week extra in unemployment. Find out if you qualify and when you'll see that money, plus a new update in the push from the president to get TikTok sold. We'll have the latest with a strange turn of events. And not so finger licking good. Oh no, don't forget, KFC is changing its slogan after 64 years. So what's changed? We'll take a look after the break. California Supreme Court overturned Scott Peterson's death sentence. Peterson was sentenced to death after a jury found him guilty of killing his wife Lacey and their unborn child. Now, Peterson's lawyers argued he didn't receive a fair trial because of the amount of publicity surrounding the case. The state Supreme Court says prosecutors can try again for the same sentence, but the state's high court rejected Peterson's request, affirming the murder convictions. The justices agreed the trial judge was wrong when he dismissed potential jurors who said they disagreed with the death penalty, but would be willing to impose it.
Californians on unemployment may receive an extra $300 a week. The FEMA program will provide for a limited time an extra $300 a week on top of your regular benefits. But in order to qualify, you must already be eligible for at least $100 a week and prove your wages were lost because of the pandemic. It's unclear exactly how long this process will take before you actually see any money.
We're out doing inspections tonight.
Agents for the state's Alcoholic Beverage Control Department make unannounced visits to restaurants in Culver City. The state has the power to file criminal charges, impose fines, and even close down the violating establishments. State agents say most restaurants are following the rules, but agents also issued 113 citations across the state. The agency said its first step is educating the establishments and then issuing a warning.
All right. Coming up after the break, Mike standing by the big green wall.
Gino, here's something we didn't have last week, the afternoon breeze. In fact, we had easterly flow, and then at night it was just almost completely still, and that was one of the things that made us extremely humid. We are tracking more changes that are seeming to move in the right direction. We'll take a look together when we come back. Welcome back. A lovely sky out there. Some blue mixed in with some mid-level cloud cover out there. Had a very impressive storm that rumbled across the Coachella Valley. Well, it didn't make its way across the Coachella Valley, but you could certainly hear that thunder this afternoon. Way up over Ottawa, saw some beneficial rain. No watches or warnings were placed from it. Just dropped down some wonderfully welcome water. Here's what we're looking at in the big picture. I've got it zoomed out way out right now to show you what's happening, especially near the equator and the tropics. Things becoming very active there. Nothing in the eastern Pacific right now, thank goodness. We'll keep an eye on that. All of the focus is in the Gulf right now. And here's what we're looking at is a couple of storms, Marco and Laura. What a mess. We call that spaghetti streams for a very specific reason here. Let's see if we can break that out. First of all, Marco, post-tropical low, not expected to become a hurricane here. Will make its way uncomfortably close to New Orleans, but this is basically a Tuesday in August for folks who live in the Gulf. This is going to bring some wind and some rain. We're not really concerned with that. It's Laura that we're keeping a very close eye on, making its way across Puerto Rico and Cuba as we speak here. And then once it gets out into open water, this just becomes an X factor. Expected to become a Category 1 storm. There's very low wind shear, there's very warm water here, and a lot of space between Cuba and New Orleans where the projected path is right now. Expected to ramp up to a Category 2, but could possibly become a Cat 3. That makes it a major hurricane. A lot of folks making preparations there. We'll continue to track it as it makes its way across the Gulf. Putting Futurecast into motion, well, there's our high pressure. You see that clockwise flow basically right over top of the Four Corners region. That kept us humid today. That's also what brought those storms along the Baja spine and up into our mountains as well today. Nothing severe. Expecting that to actually kind of dry out for the second half of the week here. Not expecting the mountain storms that we've seen for about the last week or so. It's the humidity that continues to be an issue. The great news is, though, you remember we're going into the weekend, we were talking about 70-degree dew points and relative humidity riding in that 30 to 40% range. So in relative terms, we're doing all right here. We'll sit in about the low to mid 50s as far as dew points go, and humidity, minimum humidity, will be about 20 to 25%. This weekend, it improves dramatically. I'll show you that in a moment. 115 was our high today. 106 is our 30-year average. Our record is 122. And in the overnights, we're still running warm, but at least we're not in the low 90s like we were last week. That was surreal. 96 currently in the Yucca Valley, 110 in Coachella, 99 out towards 29 Palms, a delightfully comfortable 77 in Big Bear. Look at that, though. 89 degrees in Idlewild. They've been running warm by day and by night for about a good 7 days now. Current winds, we were blessing this earlier. 20 miles an hour sustained, gusts up to about 25 and even 30 tonight. Northwesterly flow clearing out the I-10 corridor and giving us that ventilation that we did not get last week, and that's some good stuff. We get ourselves into double digits right between 10 and 11 o'clock tonight. We're going to keep right on going, too. We'll get ourselves into the low 90s by 2 a.m., setting us up for some mid-80s to start you off on Tuesday. And then it gets hot again. We will see dew points riding in the mid-50s, 114 by 4 p.m. there. It looks like that'll be our high in Palm Springs. 116 will be the high in Indio, 105 in Joshua Tree, 104 out towards Cabazon. Looks like it'll be in the mid-90s up towards Idlewild and Ansa. We will peak once again with our heat. In fact, that's when our watch kicks in there Wednesday into Thursday. But look at what happens this weekend. We've got a very powerful trough of low pressure pushing in from the north. It's going to take temperatures down to average, and the timing couldn't be any better. It's going to come on the weekend.
Zoom is back up and running after a brief outage this morning. This affected just about anyone trying to conduct personal or professional business. And they had no Zoom meetings, no webinars, and in some cases, no classes. Right now, it's unclear what caused the problem.
TikTok is suing the Trump administration. The administration, of course, trying to ban the Chinese-owned app and its use here in the United States. TikTok says the administration didn't give it a fair chance to defend itself over allegations that they were giving information to the Chinese government that was not otherwise available on other formats.
And Kentucky Fried Chicken is temporarily changing its slogan. Finger licking good. We all know that because, well, that's probably not the best message to send right now, to lick your fingers. KFC said the 64-year-old slogan is, quote, just doesn't feel quite right now.
Coming up next, Postmaster General back on Capitol Hill today testifying in front of the House of Representatives. And it did, of course, create some heated exchanges. We'll show it to you after the break.
And protests erupt in Wisconsin after a police officer is caught on camera shooting an unarmed black man 7 times in the back in front of his own children. What we know is still ahead. Rallies are held across the country in support of the post office. And here in the Valley, Save the Post Office Saturday saw people turn out to their local post offices with signs showing their support. Many protested recent changes by Postmaster General Louis DeJoy, including removing sorting machines ahead of November's election.
The House passed a bill giving $25 billion in emergency funding to the U.S. Postal Service and came on a rare Saturday session. The bill also reverses recent operational changes as delays have made many Americans nervous about getting election ballots in on time.
And Postmaster General Louis DeJoy testifies before House Oversight Committee members. Things quickly became contentious, with committee members questioning policy changes they say have caused critical delays.
In my heart, I'm tempted to ask, after 240 years of patriotic service delivering the mail, how can one person screw this up in just a few weeks? I guess we couldn't find a government worker who could screw it up this fast. It would take them a while.
I would like to agree with you on the heroic efforts of our 650,000 employees across the nation, and the history of the Postal Service for their the 250-year history of serving the American public. And
Will you put the machines back?
I'm very proud to lead the organization. The rest of your accusations are actually
Will you put the high-speed machines
back? No,
back?
I will not.
You will not.
Will not.
You will not. Well, there you go.
The bill the House passed would reverse many of these changes, but it's unlikely to pass the Senate and be signed by the president.
All right, taking a live look outside now, courtesy of our Agua Caliente Casino cam, checking in with Chief Meteorologist Mike Everett at the AccuWeather Forecast Center. Hey, Mike.
Gino, can we just go back to the part where two guys with Boston accents are having an argument? That was fantastic. Severe weather across the state is not so fantastic. In fact, we are tracking some issues, especially up in northern and central California, where we've been keeping a very close eye for the better part of the last week or so. Smoke advisories in place. In fact, smoke being smelt and felt all the way as far east as Kansas from the wildfires that are taking place not only in California but in Colorado right now as we speak, and more potential for fire in Northern California. In fact, we've got red flag warnings in place all the way along the spine of the Sierras and up towards Northern California. There is some moist, unstable air up there that could spark more of that dry lightning that caused the problem in the first place. And fire weather watches off towards Reno tonight and stretching up into parts of Nevada and even into Idaho. It's going to be a rough night there. We're going to do our very best to keep ourselves from getting any new fires. Take a look at radar right now. There's what it looks like. And again, not a lot of moisture for this storm system to work with. And that's part of the problem. You've got instability without moisture. That's where dry lightning comes from. Meanwhile, tracking some high pressure, and you can see that clockwise flow around it, kept us humid again today and fired up some storms, especially along the Baja spine that walked up into the Cleveland National Forest and even into parts of our mountains today. You heard that rumbling of thunder up towards Idlewild that kind of echoed throughout the valley today, but none of that rain made its way into the Coachella Valley. Shame, too, because we could have used it. We got up to 115 today. Currently, 111 is where we are at the airport. But look at this. This is what we were not receiving last week, which was that evening ventilation, or what we call the diurnal wind. Currently, 20 miles an hour sustained, gusts up to about 25 and even 30 along the I-10 corridor tonight. Okay, it'll be a bit blustery and dusty out there, but it helps us to cool, or at least feel cooler, and get some of that humidity out of here. Currently sitting at about 20%. Again, not great, but certainly a lot better than it was going into the weekend. Okay, so here's what we're looking at. We're going towards the midweek portion here. We get hot. We were 115 today. We'll be 114 on Tuesday, 115 again on Wednesday. But then as we turn the corner and go towards Thursday, not only do we start to cool, but we also start to dry as well. And it's going to set us up for an absolutely wonderful weekend, probably the best one of the entire month. We're going to take a look together. You can decide. Coming up.
All right, thank you, Mike. 2 police officers are on leave after at least one of them shot a man in Kenosha County, Wisconsin. That man is now fighting for his life as the community demands answers. Whitney Wild brings us the latest.
Rage spilled onto the street in Kenosha, Wisconsin overnight after at least one police officer shot a black man in front of his children, according to the man's attorney.
The frustration is boiling to the top, and we're sick and tired.
Police say officers were responding to a domestic disturbance call when they appeared to try to contact a man named Jacob Blake. Video taken by Rayshawn White, a witness, shows 2 officers pointed their weapons at Blake while Blake walked away from them. White's video shows when Blake opened a car door and got in, an officer grabbed Blake's shirt and then appeared to shoot him in the back. It's unclear why.
Shot fired. Happy shot fired. I'm just witnessing it and recording it. I was so angry. And me personally, I couldn't really even sleep because it was just so traumatic.
Civil rights attorney Benjamin Crump represents Blake and his family and says Blake was breaking up a fight between 2 women. Officials say 2 officers are on administrative leave and cooperating while the state's Department of Justice reviews the shooting. Blake is now fighting for his life after being airlifted from the scene of the police encounter.
We need rescue ASAP. Happy.
Angered residents call it just one event in a series that includes the May 25th death of George Floyd, which sparked months of protests around the world.
We're tired of it. Rodney King, we're tired of it. And right now, this is the wrong generation that this is happening to.
In Washington, I'm Whitney Wild reporting.
Coming up next in sports, the NFL sees double-digit false positive tests over the weekend that caused workouts to be canceled. But What caused those false positives? We're going to try to find out after the break.
Plus, some local students could be heading back to campus earlier than we thought. Today is the first day schools can request a waiver from the county for kids to return to campus, and some private schools are taking the lead. But what about our public schools? We'll have that story coming up.
All right, time now for a check on NBC Palm Springs sports headlines. The NFL says 77 positive coronavirus tests announced over the weekend were all false positives. The league has cleared all those who were involved to resume activities today. The false positive tests affected 11 teams that were all linked to one lab, BioReference, the company hired by the NFL to process their COVID-19 testing. Now, that company said in a statement on Monday that one of its labs in New Jersey had isolated contamination during test preparation. Meanwhile, we are just 2 weeks away, or a little more than 2 weeks away from the start of the NFL season. The Chiefs welcomed 2,000 fans to Arrowhead Stadium over the weekend to watch a training camp practice. But unlike the last time fans graced Arrowhead, they say coronavirus-related changes included masks, seating where they were socially distanced, and cash was not allowed for purchases. The team plans to allow 22% of the stadium's capacity for the start of the season. The Chiefs host the Texans on Thursday, September 10th, for the kickoff of Sunday Night Football on Thursday night, right here on NBC Palm Springs. The city of Cleveland says tailgating will not be allowed in the city-owned parking lots near the stadium this year to prevent people from tailgating anyways. The city will not let vehicles into the lots early. It's still not clear if fans will be allowed to attend the Browns games in person at all, but they certainly can't hang out in the parking lot and do what Browns fans do better than anyone in the world, really. Preseason AP Top 25 poll for college football is out, and once again, Clemson sits atop the pile. Second year in a row, the Tigers have had the number one spot in the poll heading into the season. However, the list also includes 9 schools from either the Big Ten or Pac-12 who aren't even going to play football this year, so you got to like their chances of going undefeated. Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia, and Oklahoma State round out the top 5. NBA playoffs continued. Philadelphia 76ers have fired their head coach, Brett Brown. This after the Sixers were swept out of the playoffs by the Celtics in the first round. Brown posted a 221 and 344 record during 7 seasons with the Sixers, including 3 straight playoff appearances. He used a statement on Twitter thanking the organization. Brown is still owed several $1 million for the remainder of his contract. Getting fired in the NBA is not like, if I were to get fired. Mike, you got millions on the table. Should you get fired?
Oh, absolutely. I'm kind of hoping I do. Hey, you know what? We were really enjoying that sunset last week when we had all of that moisture and humidity in the air. But you know what? Dry ones looking pretty good too. We're going to shut down that mountain moisture. We're going to cool it off. And I'll tell you when we come back. Welcome back. Here's a live look for you. I really enjoy this one. This is our newest camera. This is our 111 Walter Clark. Beautiful camera out there. Joins our Agua Caliente cams in helping us to tell that weather story. Last week it was all about that humidity. You could literally cut the air with a knife. Dew points got up to 70 degrees on Friday and on Saturday. Humidity was riding in about the mid 40s. It felt more like Florida than California. We are going to fix that this week, but it's going to be a very slow transition here. So we were talking about the tropics during the last half hour. Let's focus on the west here. You've still got that ridge of high pressure. Very easy to see that clockwise flow around it. Pulled some of that moisture along the spine of our mountains today. In fact, these storms started down in the Baja and then walked up through the Cleveland National Forest, made their way up into the Santa Rosas today and right up over top of San Jacinto as well, and really had a lot of bark, right? I was standing out in the front yard going, come on, you can do it. I mean, thunder rumbled all the way across the Coachella Valley today, but these things rained themselves out. We got some of those overtopping arches that came over top of the Coachella Valley, obscured the sun, and that was really about as exciting as it got. But beneficial rain up in the mountains without any lightning or watches or warnings, yeah, we'll take that every day. Now, we do have some new watches in place here. It's a little weird, and I'll tell you why in a moment here. Excessive heat watch kicks in midweek. It looks like that'll be in place for us Wednesday and Thursday. We saw the numbers a minute ago, but we'll see them again. It'll make a little more sense. Heat advisories in place once again for the Inland Empire. Temperatures will be running in the low 100s there through Thursday. And then excessive heat warnings already in place for our friends out towards the east, including out towards the Chiricahua Summit down into Imperial County as well. Temperatures clearly in the 1-teens over the next couple of days here. So you put Futurecast into motion. One of the things that you'll notice is that mountain storm activity should start to quiet down starting tomorrow. I've got some clouds that'll walk along the mountains tonight, maybe in the early morning hours of Tuesday, but it doesn't look like we're going to be seeing those afternoon storms because, well, this thing's almost literally out of moisture. Now, the flow will continue to come in from the east by day, and that will keep dew points and relative humidity relatively high. We're talking about some low to mid 50s as far as the dew points go, and that'll put humidity in that 20 to 25% minimum as we go towards Friday. So again, not great, but it is August. We are in the Sonoran Desert, but it's what happens this weekend. It's the big story. And again, no 70-degree dew points there, so we've got that going for us. We were hot today. but we didn't have an advisory. Weird, right? Well, 106 is the 30-year average for this time of year. 122 is the record set back in 1985. And we were warm and humid overnight as well, but at least we weren't in the low 90s like we were last week when we were breaking overnight temperature records. Currently 96 in the Yucca Valley, a comfy 77 up in Big Bear, 87 in Idlewild, 110 in Coachella, and currently 111 at the airport. I'm loving this. We've got that wonderful breeze coming through along I-10 there. Gusts will get up to about 25, 30 tonight. There will be some blowing dust, but to get that evening ventilation coming in from the northwest is everything, and everything that we weren't getting last week. We tuck ourselves back into double digits just after 10 p.m. tonight. That'll set us up for another mid-80 start on Tuesday, and it gets warm once again with dew points riding in the mid-50s. Look for 114 in Palm Springs, 116 in Indio, 115 in Thousand Palms, 105 in Joshua Tree, and some low 80s up in Big Bear. So the heat will peak on Wednesday. That's when our watch kicks into place there. We'll back that off 2 degrees on Thursday, and then look at what happens this weekend. Powerful low pressure will put us back down into that 107, 106 range just in time for the weekend. And if we're really good, we'll get ourselves back into the 70s again by Monday.
Today is the first day Riverside County schools can apply for waivers to get kids back on campus for learning. Only transitional kindergarten through 6th grade classes are eligible. In the Coachella Valley, no public schools have applied for the waiver, but Palm Valley School and Rancho Mirage already filled out the forms.
That's first and foremost is health and safety and well-being of all of our families. And then it's about options, creating options for those who want to be in person, for those who want to remain at home, or a variation thereof.
A submitted waiver does not guarantee approval. Palm Valley expects to hear back from the county within the next 2 weeks.
CAL FIRE Riverside County Fire Department has a new fire chief, Chief Bill Weiser. He'll lead more than 1,300 employees in the second largest geographical area in the state. He's one of 21 unit chiefs for the state, plus the county chief in charge of 21 contract cities and unincorporated areas of the desert.
It's an integral, cooperative, regional fire protection. It's probably one of the greatest plans in the nation for firefighting, how we take different communities' resource needs and put them together and to make one really strong fire department.
He's been with the fire service for nearly 40 years, all of them with CAL FIRE in different parts of the Golden State.
President Trump announces emergency use authorization for convalescent plasma treatment for COVID-19. Convalescent plasma is the liquid part of the blood which can be used to help coronavirus patients. Local hospitals have been using the treatment as part of the Mayo Clinic study. Hundreds of patients here at home have received the transfusion, but some health experts say it's too soon to know if it's totally effective.
You actually cannot say that this product is, as of yet, proven to be effective. The reality is the data is too early for us to say that with certainty.
To get more data, blood banks like LifeStream are urging recovered coronavirus patients to donate their plasma.
Our Desert Pass is brought to you by Mike Thompson RV. Your adventure starts here.
Hollywood and the desert have long been associated. The Coachella Valley has been a retreat for the rich and famous since the early 20th century. And with Hollywood comes Hollywood scandals. And one of those scandals came in the very early days of Hollywood here in the desert. Think George Clooney or Brad Pitt, Cary Grant or Clark Gable, and then triple it. And you get an idea just how big a star Rudolph Valentino was. In the days before talkies, Valentino was our first movie heartthrob. He was a sensation, he was sexual, and he was controversial. And like many of our stars today, he was scandalous.
In 1922, Rudolph Valentino came to Palm Springs following his marriage in Mexicali to Natasha Rambova, who was a set and costume designer in Hollywood.
The problem was, Valentino couldn't legally marry Natasha Rambova, real name Winifred Hugnut. Though he was divorced at the time, California law said you had to be divorced for at least a year before you could remarry. In 1919, just before the rise of his career, Valentino impulsively married actress Jean Acker, who was involved with actresses Grace Darman and Alla Nazmova. Acker became involved with Valentino in part to remove herself from the lesbian love triangle. Quickly regretting the marriage, she locked Valentino out of their room on their wedding night. The couple separated soon thereafter, and the marriage was never consummated. The couple, though, remained legally married until 1921. The same year, Valentino married Rambova, which is bigamy.
There was a big deal about it. Like, the law was actually seeking witnesses, and they were going to really prosecute Valentino for this really big deal.
The Valentinos spent their honeymoon in Palm Springs at the Palm Springs Hotel. The hotel at that time was under the ownership of sisters Cornelia and Florilla White. Florilla, a friend of the newlyweds, hosted the couple in her cottage.
And she said that no, they never consummated, that actually Florilla was in the bedroom with Winifred or Natasha Rambova the night of their wedding. So they never actually consummated it. It wasn't a real wedding, so he couldn't be found guilty.
But as it turns out, the Sheik actually did spend a lot of time here in the desert, though not with any of his wives.
Valentino was a frequent visitor to Palm Springs. He was actually pretty good friends with a hermit that lived in Palm Canyon named Pester. We have a few photographs of them together. Pester is usually playing a homemade guitar of some sort, and they're in front of Pester's little hut that he had in Palm Canyon, and they seem to be pretty good friends. He came out to Palm Springs many times.
So was Valentino a bigamist? Or were the marriages of the movie star all just a front? No one really knows. Rudolph Valentino died in 1926 at the age of 31, just about the time silent pictures and silent picture stars were fading away. But we do know the stars were already coming to the desert in 1921, and so were their scandals.
brighter side of the news is brought to you by Holland RV, located off the I-10 at Washington.
Well, heroes get a helping hand battling wildfires in California. Well, helping paw, that is. This is Kareth, the golden retriever, visiting some of his firefighting buddies in Marin County and watching them roll by as they head out to fight wildfires burning across the state. Kareth is a certified fire station therapy dog. We're told he loves making people happy, and his favorite hobby is trail running with his mom. He even has his own Instagram page. Kareth, the golden retriever. There he is. Oh, what a smile. All right, before we leave you tonight, remember, click on, oh my gosh, I did it, Gino.
I know,
Scan this with your smartphone camera. Do not click your television screen. This will do nothing. Scan it and visit our website, NBC